A common defense I saw for the Devil May Cry reboots was that the old games were bad and that the stories were shallow, so rebooting was a good thing. Really, I found that most defense of the game was actually just a smokescreen for people to shit on the old games out of nowhere, and this was the prime example. Yes, the series has clearly always emphasized gameplay over story, but it's not like there was nothing there. Sure, DMC 1 was very bare bones and 4 was incomplete, but there is a lot going on under the surface of the games, especially 2 and 3, that I think is worth talking about. People keep asking me to make more positive videos, so let me show you what it was about this series that filled my dark soul with light. What do you mean, D? A central theme of the series is nature versus nurture, a theme that is completely absent from the reboot. On a surface level, humans are good and demons are bad. However, every entry provides an exception to the latter, and the sequels provide exceptions to the former as well. In DMC 1, we know that Sparda, a demon, turned against his own kind after he woke up to justice and fought to protect humanity. We also have Trish, a demon created to manipulate Dante, who later sacrifices herself to save him. DMC 3 has Virgil, a half-demon who is a villain, but he has sympathetic motives behind his actions, while his human accomplice Arkham murdered his own wife and would gladly do the same to his daughter so that he can selfishly acquire the power of Sparda. In 4, we have the quarter-demon Nero, who fights to save his lover Kyrie, while the humans of the Order of the Sword aspire to acquire demonic power and are willing to sacrifice the lives of untold innocents to achieve it. You may notice I didn't discuss DMC 2 there. Well, DMC 2 is the entry that took this idea and ran with it as the central theme. The game gave us Lucia, an artificial demon created by the evil human Arius. Lucia was defective and abandoned, only to be found later and taken in by Mathieu, who raised her as a daughter. During Lucia's first encounter with Arius, the truth is revealed and Lucia suffers an existential crisis, eventually begging Dante to kill her before she becomes a monster. Dante reassures her that
devils never cry.
He then departs, leaving her to face Arius' new demonic form, giving the artificial demon the chance to prove herself less of a monster than her human creator. Good stuff, right? A recurring element in these stories is love. Dante and Nero explain this in DMC 4.
Humans possess something that demons don't. Sparda had a heart that could love another person. And that is what you lack.
Dante always took after his human mother, more so than his demonic father. Sparda himself found love for humanity and later romantic love for Eva. Trish develops a platonic love for Dante, closer to a sibling love than the incestuous interpretation many people see, emboldening her to betray her evil master. Lucia develops a daughterly love for Mathieu and loves the humans enough to worry she might one day turn on them. Virgil is motivated by his love for the mother he couldn't save and, most likely, for his brother too. Him closing off his heart from his brother ultimately leads to his downfall. And Nero is in love with Kyrie. Her brother Credo, after acquiring demonic power, turns against the Order when they capture Kyrie. Thanks to the compassion and self-sacrifice of Eva, Dante, Mathieu, Kyrie and the like, these demons defied their dark heritage and became heroes, while those that are incapable of love, from a heartless CEO to a matericidal fiend to a cult leader with delusions of grandeur, are monsters that will ultimately fail in the end. What, that's not deep enough for you? You still think Reboot Dante has more going on than his classic counterpart? Well, kick up a chair and grab a slice of pizza because this next section hits the jackpot. The player fights Virgil 3 times in DMC 3, and this serves 3 distinct purposes. First, it breaks the game up into 3 acts. Second, it establishes Virgil as Dante's ultimate rival and provides the blueprint for action game rivals that has been followed by the likes of Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising and Yakuza ever since. Third, and most importantly, it marks Dante's development over the course of the story. At the beginning of the game, Virgil has already awakened his demonic power and is, well,
motivated.
He has a goal to achieve: acquire the power of Sparda so that he will never again be defenseless as he was when his mother was killed. Dante, conversely, has neither of those things. While Virgil embraces his demonic power and discards his humanity, which he perceives as a weakness that stopped him from saving his mother, Dante went to the opposite extreme, denying his demonic heritage and vowing to kill every demon he comes across until he finds the one that killed his mother. He's only here for a scrap with Virgil because he doesn't really like him. Of the 4 central characters in the story, Dante is the only one who lacks a real purpose here. The game is about Dante acquiring that purpose. Virgil has power and a goal to strive towards. Dante has neither. He's an aimless drifter, so naturally when the two clash in Mission 7, Dante gets his ass kicked. But, in defeat, Dante is forced to embrace his demonic powers to match Virgil, and the loss of his mother's amulet gives him motivation. When the two fight again in Mission 13, Virgil doesn't take Dante seriously. He cockily puts away his sword and decides to get some practice in with his new weapon. But Dante is now Virgil's equal in both power and motivation, forcing his brother to switch back to the weapon he's more proficient with, putting the two on equal footing. The fight is interrupted before it concludes, but neither one has the advantage from what we see. Before they have their final battle in Mission 20, Dante encounters Lady, who is still determined to kill Arkham, even with her leg wound and no demonic powers to compensate. The two fight and Dante feels her conviction. He sees, finally, what his father saw in humanity 2 millennia ago. He sees what makes them worth protecting. This is spelled out explicitly for the player by Dante himself.
Quite frankly, at first, I didn't give a damn, but because of you, I know what's important now. I know what I need to do.
Lady, who until now had seen Dante solely as just another demon, can see this change in him, which is why she lends him her rocket launcher, which is named after her dead mother, and leaves the task of ending her father to him. Hell, one could see Lady's story as a parallel to Dante's. Dante idolizes his dead mother, wearing her amulet at all times and vowing to avenge her murder. But he hates his father, saying he doesn't have a father and rejecting his demonic powers. Likewise, Lady idolizes her dead mother, naming her weapon after her and vowing to avenge her murder, but hates her father, trying to kill him in revenge. It could be that she sees this parallel and how Dante is stronger for having moved past his hang-ups, which she is now trying to do by metaphorically letting go of her mother and giving up her chance at revenge. So when Dante finally faces Virgil again in the game's climax, his arc is complete. Dante has come to fully embrace both sides of his heritage and find a goal that isn't steeped in his own inadequacy. Just as Sparda woke up to justice 2,000 years ago, this is Dante's awakening. Virgil, conversely, has remained static throughout the entire story and is unable to move past the death of his mother. Perhaps Virgil realizes this and is unable to accept that their humanity is anything but a weakness, contributing towards his decision to remain in the demon world to strengthen his demonic power and prove that his method was right. And then you compare this to the reboot, where Virgil is just randomly revealed to be evil and we're supposed to take this sudden twist and final boss seriously after no build up and the game itself admitting that Dante was always stronger than Virgil. Yeah, no. But this is only the beginning of Dante's progression, as there are 3 other details that we can observe when placing the games into chronological order, creating a kind of retroactive arc. Each game sees Dante following in the footsteps of his father. In DMC 3, Sparda had sealed Tema Nigru away beneath the earth. When it rises again, Dante does nothing about it, and for all we know it's still there. In DMC 1, Sparda had defeated the Demon King Mundus, which Dante then replicates by tapping into his father's power through his sword. In DMC 4, Sparda had sealed the Hellgate in Fortuna. Trish theorizes in the novelization by the game's scenario writer that Sparda couldn't bring himself to destroy this portal to the demon world, as the demon world is still his original home. Dante has no such emotional attachment and easily destroys the gate, which one could read as Dante surpassing his father in emotional strength. And finally, in DMC 2, Sparda had sealed Argosax the Chaos away as he wasn't powerful enough to destroy it. Dante then comes in and wipes the floor with it with pretty much no effort, showing that he has far surpassed his father. Unfortunately, this progression is weakened somewhat by the recent revelation that DMC 2 is now set before DMC 4. Yes, overzealous commenter, I did know about that. However, this revelation does help to strengthen the second detail surrounding Dante's progression that I'd like to discuss here: his Devil Trigger. Dante's DT is very inconsistent. In 1 and 3, its form and abilities are influenced by the weapon Dante has equipped. In 2, 4 and 5 though, there is one form, with 2 allowing the player to customize the abilities with an amulet. Placing them in the new chronological order, however, paints this fluctuation not as an inconsistency, but as a progression in Dante's power. 3 and 1 come first, with the form drawing on the element and abilities of the weapon Dante uses. This is him drawing on the power for his transformation, with the Rebellion form being the only one that can truly be considered his own. This is supported by the fact that he can't Devil Trigger while using Force Edge, which is the sealed version of Sparda. And likewise, Virgil's Devil Trigger changes between Yamato and Beowulf, but the Force Edge and Yamato Devil Trigger is just a Yamato one. After he uses his father's power to defeat Mundus, Dante's Devil Trigger begins to truly take shape in DMC 2. Its abilities rely somewhat on an amulet, but some base abilities and the physical form are set in stone. This form is then refined by the time of DMC4, and 5 uses largely the same form. No weapons or amulets affect this form because he doesn't need those crutches anymore. He apparently doesn't even use Sparda's Devil Trigger when wielding that weapon in 5 just to nail the point home. There is a slight hiccup in that Dante has the much stronger Majin form in 2 and something similar in 5 but not 4, but one could say the events of 4 just didn't challenge him the way 2 and 5 do. The third detail I'd like to discuss is Dante's role in each story. It's easy to view the series as being all about Dante, with him taking a backseat for Nero in 4 and 5, but even 2 had Dante in the mentor role. DMC2 is Lucia's story, but people miss that because Dante's campaign is longer and is labelled as Disc 1, and the gameplay isn't good enough for people to revisit and re-examine the game very often. Dante stopped being the main character after he achieved his life goal. He opened his shop in 3 to find the demon responsible for his mother's death,
And if I kill each one that comes, eventually I should hit the jackpot sooner or later.
and in 1 he achieved this goal.
Jackpot!
So, having achieved his life goal before he hit 30, Dante doesn't have a purpose beyond protecting humanity anymore. But every now and then he comes across another good demon in need of mentoring, a role he is more than happy to fill. Maybe he wants to help them in a similar way to how Lady helped him. The first half of the series, the manga 3-1 and debatably the anime, is the extent of Dante's role as the main character. For the second half, 2 novel, 2, 4 and 5, he's helping other characters to achieve their goals and become stronger people. It's a really interesting direction to go with a protagonist, and I don't think it comes up very often. In a way, he's laying the groundwork for the next incarnation of the legendary Dark Knight to continue his work after he's gone. So you see, Devil May Cry is not just some dumb action series with a barely considered, ultimately cobbled together plot. Clearly, about as much thought goes into the story as into the gameplay. How ironic is it that the allegedly smarter and more sophisticated reinvention of Devil May Cry that so many game journalists touted as a bold new direction for the franchise has none of the depth or themes to match the original series, instead trading them in for edgy pretentiousness. So when you play through Devil May Cry 5, don't just dismiss the game's plot as shallow or bad. Look a little deeper and you just might find that Devil May Cry is deeper than you think. If you liked this video, then check out this similar video by Endless Jess about how God of War was also deeper than you think.